Welcome to the 15th session where we are using Indian knowledge systems for creating a global well-being curriculum to meet the new goal of education. In the previous sessions we have seen how IKS's ways of knowing, that is Pratyaksha Praman, Anuman, Upaman and Shabd Raman, were always an international curriculum. After completing this session, we would like you to compare how CKS and IKS ideas of character and personality development are subtle, and how can IKS study and experience the subtle. What is reality? We live in a physical earth viewing day-to-day things as real. Are we having a vision that a frog has while staying in a well? What is the reality outside the well of sense perception? We saw earlier that we can see a man who is 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 63 kgs and is wearing spectacles. This is direct perception. Is sense perception true? Definitely. But sense perception's truths are only for the external vision. The person may also have qualities like sacrifice, kindness, and determination that cannot be seen, that cannot be touched, that cannot be measured. Even if we cut the person into pieces, these qualities will not be visible. But can we deny that they exist? What is the source of these subtle qualities? See these videos. We pause for 5 minutes after you have seen the videos to enable you to write your answer about the source of these subtle qualities. The OECD Learning Compass seeks to incorporate subtle things like attitudes and values. Will use of Indian knowledge system when added to current knowledge system help inculcate the subtle? Both IKS and CKS seek the goal of inner happiness and well-being. Their way of achieving the goal is different. CKS uses sense perception, its first way of knowing. It can only explore the outer world which keeps changing. Hence, happiness and well-being that CKS creates fluctuates. IKS believes that developing character and personality to awaken the voice of conscience is the path. It thus finds inner happiness by exploring the inner world. This creates well-being for society. CKS, in its ways of knowing and in choosing its sources of knowledge, gives prime importance to sense perception. This focus on sense perception cannot perceive how the multiplicity of population of different countries can have a oneness. Thus, the goal of international mindedness is not obvious to a sense perception based view that seeks immediate gains. It is unable to live in the reality that common atoms bind everything in the universe. Similarly, the focus on sense perception covers perception with the dark cloud of selfishness. The nature of introspection too is used to plan selfish, myopic goals that will lead to win-lose situations instead of win-win situations. Memory and reason follow suit and use the testimony of others' success who have used selfish approaches for achieving their short-term goals. Social norms, therefore, have blurred the sources of knowledge. This is a slow process that has progressed over centuries. We can trace the root solve the problem to earlier than 19th century. The problem with CKS has been its inability to identify the subtle essence, the one energy that powers all of creation. It seeks that essence in all directions except in its oneness. Maybe it took the idea of oneness of essence of IKS in its Advaita and tested it in the gross world. It is obvious that what is subtle will not give the same physical and chemical properties as in the gross. It activates these physical and chemical properties, but sense perception cannot find it in gross reality. The idea of reductionism in 19th century thus became accepted as unscientific. Maybe with this, all subtle IKS conclusions became esoteric and unscientific. This probably led to a reaction in the opposite direction, where scientific materialism considered subtle thoughts to be natural excreta of the physical brain of humans. With such a focus, the curriculum of all subjects was conceived in a values neutral way. Human values were added separately after the world wars. They were never part of the original ingredients or conceptualization of education ideas in subtle and gross compartments. Finally, philosophy gave the intellectual base for rejecting the subtle and using the gross sense perception as the final and only instrument of investigation. Feuerbach's philosophy that sense perception is the human essence gave the final death knell to Hegel and therefore Kant's philosophical ideas, according to Karl Marx's co-author Engels. This sequence of events may have been the cause of social pain that OECD now wants to reverse by building character. What is the difference between IKS and current knowledge system? The current knowledge system uses sense perception as the basis of judging. Its comparison and inferences therefore is also judged from the sense perception point of view. This has an impact on the nature of results it includes in the curriculum. The subtlest of the subtle in IKS is the ability to experience unchanging bliss. That this is the truth of human potential is an experience that comes from a study, practice and awareness arising from its Atmavidya texts or Advaita texts. The vision their study imparts gives the student of Vishishta Advaita a glimpse of truth of his or her potential. IKS prepares students for it, but its Advaitic journey has to be travelled on one's own. The goal of well-being of society is met halfway by the IKS philosophy of Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita. The way of looking at the truth in Dvaita is no longer taken as that of desiring to be the ant that can partake of the sugarcane juice of divinity or the energy activating all and everything in creation, or even the I that is the cause of all. The only problem with the current approach is that it takes sense perception as the starting point. The pleasures of the senses are taken as the sugarcane juice sought. This places the human eye at the very bottom, and hence its comparisons and inferences are operating at the base level of senses. As IKS takes a bigger view of revealed truth and seeks to prepare students for the subtlest of the subtle truth of unchanging bliss, it creates well-being of the individual and society through the study of Vishishta Advaita. IKS seeks an experience of truth that is above sense perception. The path to character and personality building in IKS is linked to the ability to experience the truth of creation and our own truth. One way of visualizing the truth of creation is shown again. It views the universe expressing itself through the process of creation, preservation and creative destruction continuously. All this is possible by energy that is inherent in everything from atoms to life-giving substances. The process of atomization and deatomization uses the principle in science that matter is neither created or destroyed, but energy is only changing its form. The source by its nature is above all of creation, preservation, or creative destruction. Though it is the cause behind the creator, preserver, creative destroyer, and energizer, it is beyond them. It is called the observer of everything. The knowledge of IKS can start from being awe of these four processes, which are shown as legs of the chair on which the observer sits. Creation is infinite and powers of human sense organs are finite. This is how IKS began. It is impossible to comprehend the infinite using finite instruments. Our sense perception are finite instruments and creation is infinite. It made attempts to transcend sense perception. With such humility and awe of creation, the Rig Veda was revealed. The secrets of what elements are the basis of creation was also revealed. When the fundamental thread that constitutes the warp and woof of creation is revealed, it becomes possible to unwind it to uncover the essential truth behind creation. The earth element is visible. The energy powering all processes is invisible. Can education only rely on the visible? If not, what is the technique, the method, and validity used to study the invisible? Seeking an alternate knowledge system is to include all ways of knowing in the search for truth. Also, the evidence of current research on well-being is not able to convince all that current ideas can prevent social pain. The 2008 recession led the OECD to conclude that well-being was not delivered by CKS. We also know that CKS has been working on the well-being curriculum since early part of 21st century. 500 campus grants in the USA were given for 15 years, leading to 2 books of essays and 5 monographs. Professor Harvard was leading this research. Apart from this, many others too were working on the same idea in their own way. Gallup, for example, did 100 million global interviews. The topic was addressed very seriously. 2 questions remain. Why, despite 15 years of academic research, nearly 3/4 of the cumulative prevalence of mental health problems have their onset before age 25? Are these not the education years where mental well-being is to be created? Data shows that nearly 3/4 of the cumulative prevalence of mental health problems, including substance abuse, anorexia, nervosa, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and bulimia nervosa, have their onset before age 25. You can check the lecture notes for this reference. Secondly, the evidence of social and economic behavior in 2019 and 2020 and later is not convincing. It does not make a strong case for use of CKS's well-being curriculum. This is not a judgment on CKS researchers' sincerity and utility of their effort. 2 critically useful ideas came up in the 20th century. CKS has yet to realize their potential, while IKS ways of knowing, with the use of IKS ways of knowing, this can be achieved. IKS is about comprehending the truth of reality. On this, CKS has done work but has been unable to complete it. 2 of its most powerful concepts are revisited here. The first is on the comprehension of reality. Research in quantum physics has clearly revealed the beginning point of IKS's search for truth of reality. Quantum physics finds that things are not what they seem. The reality of atoms is very different from the appearance of matter as we see it. Hence, our sense perception is unable to grasp the truth of reality. This is the starting point of education curriculum in IKS. And it is where CKS stops. IKS takes the investigation further to explore how to live in the reality of quantum physics. IKS's ways of knowing explore the truth of the individual who too is part of creation. CKS too, like IKS, has explored the reality of the human being. Maslow, American Psychological Association's president, he gave a hierarchy of human needs, which gives a good idea of what human beings seek and when. However, CKS has been unable to find a way for humans to rise in this hierarchy, while IKS concentrates fully on creating enabling conditions for humans to rise in Maslow's need hierarchy. So IKS is an eye-opening view into reality of self and reality of creation. The difference in CKS and IKS ways of knowing can metaphorically be understood using eyes. This explanation only makes the concepts easy without any claim to scholarship or way of revealing the final truth. The CKS uses human sense perception that we can represent with human eyes. It depends on these eyes for comparison and inference. Of course, the mind uses many abstract concepts in mathematics, sciences, and tries to comprehend ideas in the mind. However, the person who is exploring these concepts may often be tied down to the experience of I am the body. IKS sees self-experience as beginning from I am not just the body. Opening the perception to I am not just the body is represented by both eyes being half closed and the eye of wisdom being half open. This is in such a state of mind that the other ways of knowing, Anuman, Upaman, Shabd Praman, are used. This is the Vishisht Advaita way. This is not to deny that scientists like Einstein and Newton did not share such a state. They too had concluded that everything in creation is a play of energy. However, their findings could not be taken further to guide all on the way of living life. Professor Chomsky points out how, despite Newton's discoveries, the force of arguments prevalent at that time continued. When the experience, I am not the body, the revealed truth, or the third eye of Shiva is opened. Whenever the experience emerges that I am not just the body, then the third eye of Shiva is opened. This is what Advaita says. It gives the Mahavakyas of ancient wisdom. Many religions are revealed and have testified to the ability to experience this elevated state of being. The truth revealed here is the final truth. Reductionism may have tried to test this truth in the material world. That is why the two eyes of the material world are closed here, as the truth doesn't apply here. Did this lack of understanding lead to scientific materialism, the opposite, seeing only with two eyes, drawing inferences and comparisons in this way only? IKS has a realistic way of approaching the search for truth. It does not start by denying visible reality. It starts by observing it. The same diagram shown earlier is shown again, only this time it is divided into 3 simple steps. The steps show the progress of the individual through education of IKS from one state of awareness to another. The way of exploring the world with both eyes open is to examine all phenomena in nature with a sense of awe and try to explore that which enables these multiple phenomena to create harmony in nature. Instead of getting confused with multiplicity, the approach is to search and find out what creates harmony and balance in creation. Such a search leads to the conclusion that this is beyond sense perception. The slow half closing of the two eyes and the slow opening of the third eye is the next step. We move from Pratyaksha Pramana to Anuman and Upaman from a point of view different from scientific materialism. When scientific materialism based sense perception point of view is dropped, the assumption that the material body of the universe and self are the only truth is dropped. This leads to the Vishishtadvaita point of view. Just as Archimedes was able to draw inference while in a bath, let us metaphorically say with eyes half closed, similar inferences of human potential too are revealed with the third eye being half open. It helps all discover their individuality and hence unravel their innate creativity. This is the well-being curriculum. Finally, when this point of view is deeply explored, the spirit that makes the electrons move is identified as being the same that is making the body move. The fact that the same spirit that is outside is within us too is an experience of unity of creation. It cannot be tested as reductionism. It is a view that emerges as an experience within. Science is limited by the use of the mind. This experience beyond the mind is achieved by disciplining the mind using practice. The last session examined the nature of truth to be threefold, which is that which is visible, that which can be inferred, and that which remains constant always. A sense perception based view is nurtured by CKS. Its goal is to create a capacity for earning higher income and creating prosperity. The approach of IKS is to give a subtle experience of one's true potential that is beyond sense perception. This develops character, which is the goal of IKS and now OECD's 2030 goal too. While CKS uses sense perception for all investigation, IKS practices of speaking the truth and following righteous conduct make the intellect guide sense perception. It transforms the human heart and makes well-being in society possible with its approach. Thus, IKS education incorporates both secular and spiritual components. Its secular education is guided by its study of limits called dharma or righteous conduct. Its spiritual education helps each individual explore his or her human spirit or truth. Who am I? Is its first search. Awareness of truth of ourselves helps conclude that we are not just the body, but also the subtle mind, intellect, and something more. Such an investigation gives intuition and insights. It creates balance within. This, along with righteous conduct, creates balance in society simultaneously. IKS sees the concept of the three processes of creation, preservation, and creative destruction as a flow, not a stagnant state. Human life, which goes through these states, is thus also a flow. Its education is a flow that integrates with the flow of life and the flow of nature. How does the flow of education and life merge in IKS? The flow of life is fulfilled by the four goals of life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha in IKS. That is, righteous conduct, declaration of distinction of humans from animals, desire fulfillment, and detachment from fruit of action. The pairing of the goals of dharma with artha and kama with moksha is critical. All problems in society occur when unlimited desire fulfillment is taken as the purpose of doing business and living life. Education enables this by creating an awareness that humans are not just the body but also the mind and the soul. The intellect guides the mind to discriminate between right and wrong. This leads to desire fulfillment in a selfless way. It leads to doing the right thing because it needs to be done and not for petty self-interest. The experience of unity of atoms leads to IKS's sustainability concept. Science recognizes that atoms join all of creation. Thus, a scientific link exists between nature and us, and this link is of atoms. But its recognition has not led to environmental sustainability in CKS, despite many changes in curriculum. IKS incorporates the sustainability idea in its very conception of humans. The Purusha Suktam of the Vedas, for example, visualizes humans as follows. Humans are a limb of society. Society is a limb of nature. Thus, the visualization of nature, society, and humans as one body is made, just as humans naturally look after their bodies. Hence, the same care is extended to society and nature. Normally, we do not even think of harming the body, leave alone acting in that manner. Similarly, overusing nature or overburdening society with our greed is something that should naturally not occur in IKS's conceptualization. Well-being in society needs an attitude, OECD says. Is IKS's attitude needed? Attitude is linked to mental well-being also. IKS uses practices to create it. What happens without them? A workshop by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, Medicine had a keynote address by Professor Neil Halfon, the director at University of California, UCLA, and professor at its School of Medicine. He said that mental, behavioral, and developmental problems are at epidemic levels among children in the United States of America. Nearly 3/4 of the cumulative prevalence of mental health problems have their onset before the age of 25. Professor Tweng of San Diego State University writes in the Physicians Weekly of February 2020, and I quote, "The epidemic is all too real," unquote. In fact, mental health issues among teens and young adults is nothing short of staggering, she finds. And she finds that from 2009 to 2017, major depression among 20 to 21-year-olds has more than doubled from 17% to 15%. Among 16 to 17-year-olds, it rose by 69%. From 2008 to 2017, among 18 to 25-year-olds, serious psychological distress jumped by 71%. Twice as many 22 to 23-year-olds attempted suicide in 2017 versus 2008. 55% more had suicidal thoughts. By 2017, 1 out of 5 12 to 17-year-old girls had experienced major depression in the previous year. The crisis is till the age of 25. Can education respond to this challenge? The challenge is not of prosperity, it is in the mind. If individual well-being is under stress, can social well-being be created? The IKS question is it possible to keep the power to determine personal well-being and happiness within oneself? Can our locus of control be moved within ourselves? If so, how? The understanding of energy is to enable such a state of mind that remains in equilibrium, irrespective of the pulls and pressures of circumstances. When a majority of minds in society remain in such an equilibrium, well-being in society results. Society is only an aggregation of individuals. Without working on creating a state of well-being within each individual, education cannot create well-being in society. However, this requires practice. This course lays a deep emphasis on practice. Every attempt is made to make all the lectures very short. A 5-minute slot at the end of this lecture is being given for silent sitting. This is to enable the participant to mull over what is said. Whatever has been heard should be repeated in the mind so that it gets absorbed. Just as sugar is stirred in a cup of tea or coffee with a spoon, use the spoon of silence to stir the sugar of Indian knowledge systems in your mind. It takes some time for the tea or coffee to become sweet. Patience is very important. The perspectives shared in the course will seem meaningful only if such silent sitting is done to mull over what has been said. Else, the half an hour spent in delivering the lectures will be a waste of time. We welcome you to undertake an inner journey during these 5 minutes. Only then will knowledge that is outside you will become wisdom inside you. The time allocated for this is actually 20 minutes, not 5 minutes. The time should be increased gradually. This is also a time for the mind to take rest. In case it cannot do that, mull over whether the voice of the conscience has guided you at any time in life till now. We accept challenges for the physical body in games. In a gym, we can have a 20 minutes plank challenge. We may exchange challenges on the quantity of food we can eat. Can we go beyond such challenges to the second step of the Indian knowledge systems? Can we see if the mind itself can take rest and maybe stop working? Can we explore what will happen if it becomes zero? Remember, it is not good to challenge the mind. It rebels and makes you do the opposite of what you want it to do. It is far simpler to observe the mind. For doing this, first the physical body should move as little as possible. Observe the mind as it tells the body to move. You are not telling the body to move, the mind is telling the body to move. Observe the mind. Move away from the mind and see what it is forcing the body to do. Watch the mind as if you are sitting on a fan at a distance. When you are at home, Shavasana in yoga is a good posture for this practice. Try to first silence the body, then the mind. For those who have mastered this, they can try the next method. When you think of nothing, can you experience love without giving it a shape of a thing like your favorite food, or a thing that you want to own, or the physical form of a person? Can it just be love without an emotion to a person or a thing? Can it be love for the sake of love? How do you experience loving yourself? The purpose of this course is to help you discover yourself, that loving being beyond the body and the mind.